In this lesson, we're going to continue on refining our female hairstyle by layering in some additional strands and details. So let's go ahead and jump back in. Okay, so in that previous lesson, we started off by establishing this part in the hair just right up here. And we basically erased away a fine line and then hazed it out with a soft round brush. And we finished out the lesson by starting to work in and layer in some additional strands in the hair. So just kind of turning off the visibility for those additional strands. We're starting to develop a level of depth here. And so we're just going to continue on in this lesson, really getting in there and adding a lot of details. Now, before we actually do that, let's kind of focus on this area right here where the hair meets the face, meets the head. This was something I was wanting to work in the previous lesson, but I'd like to add in a shadow just right underneath all of this hair, just so it can set on the head just a little bit better. So what we're going to do is go over to our layers panel, and let's just go ahead and create a new layer beneath this flattened hair layer that we're working on. So I'm just making a new layer, and we'll go ahead and copy up our layer mask, just holding down Alt and dragging. And we'll just call this head shadow, appropriately enough. And I'm going to grab my brush tool over my tool panel, and we're going to be using a soft round brush for this. And we'll turn on transfer and just add some pressure sensitivity. So we're going to add a little bit of a shadow just coming underneath just these areas right here. Right now there's just the contrast is really strong. So I may actually just want to sample from some of these areas, some of these warm tones that I have just on the skin. It's available to us on the face, so we'll go ahead and take advantage of that. And just very softly on this layer, just kind of work in a shadow, just using this soft round brush. Just kind of come around some of these areas where the hair meets the skin, just so we can kind of set it on there just a little bit nicer. So I might just sample from just some of these different areas of shadows that we already have on the face, to kind of aid in adding those shadows in. Let's go ahead and just make a kind of a quick comparison. And if it feels a little too intense, we can always kind of lower the opacity down in some areas. We can grab our eraser brush, just double checking that in the brush panel, and we can kind of erase away a few areas. But that just feels a little bit better now. It feels like it's just kind of setting in. Feels like it's placed on the head a little bit more naturally. Okay, so that's feeling pretty nice. Just kind of adding a few tweaks here and there with that shadow. Okay, so let's kind of jump back to our strands layer and start working in and really getting detailed with these additional strands. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my brush tool, and let's go back to just like a hard round brush just for right now. We're going to kind of jump between the hard round brush and that natural bristle brush, just to kind of give a little bit of variety in those hair strands. Okay, so let's go ahead and kind of start back over here where we've got just this swoop of hair, and we'll kind of focus on that. We want a little bit of variety in there, so I'm kind of sampling some of this highlight area on the top of the head right there. And we'll just kind of start to work that in. Now my stroke looks like it's maybe a little large for my liking. I'm taking a couple steps back. We may want to reduce the size of my brush tip down just a little bit more. Okay, so let's go ahead and zoom in there. And I want to try and just have one fluid stroke each time I do this. So try to do that. Try not to do it multiple times, working your way down to achieve one stroke. So again, hair clumps tends to clump together, so I'm kind of having some of these strands kind of come in there and clump in. And I'm thinking this area over here too needs a little bit of attention, needs a little bit of variety brought in to kind of break it up. Very nice. Let's just kind of work our way down here. Again, this is just kind of a layering process that I like to do. One of the things I said early on in this course, I believe, is my biggest problem used to be going too detailed too quick. So I've tried to take my time in working in these strands, not going too quickly. Okay, we may want to work in some additional colors. You know, we were kind of adding some blue early on, since we do have kind of some blue in our environment. So I'm just grabbing kind of that pastel cyan blue. And I'm being very careful about this. I'm not trying to get too carried away just yet, but just having a little bit of variety in there. Just in the hair, just kind of coming around, working that in. Okay, let's go ahead and kind of zoom out and see how that's looking. Very nice. Let's go ahead and kind of focus on some other areas of the head. We're just going to kind of continue on sampling from various parts. Just kind of working our way around, really. Try not to spend too much time in any one spot, because I'll start to overwork it, adding too many strands. Some of these areas where we're kind of on the edge, where we softened it, I'm kind of starting to work in just a few stray hairs. Again, her hair's dry. I don't want it to feel wet. And every now and then I may want to kind of erase or kind of reduce the opacity of some parts of those strands. Okay, so just kind of working our way down over here. And this was another area down here where the hair swoops out, where we kind of hazed it out a little bit with that eraser tool. Now let's kind of add another layering of hair over that. Just trying to think of how some of those strands may swoosh out. So these strands are a little bit more in focus. And we don't have to add too many, just a few here. So having a few that were kind of hazed out a little bit, and then a few that are kind of more in focus here, a little stronger in opacity, just kind of adds to a little bit of the depth overall, rather than everything being perfectly in focus. Let's go ahead and kind of focus on some of these strands over here in the forehead. Maybe you just want to have one really light one kind of coming down there and right there. And this area here still feels a little harsh, where this clump of hair is coming across. So let's go ahead and just kind of add a few strands. That may feel just a little harsh. Let's try that one more time. So as you do this, if you're at this point now where you're working in some of these additional strands, just kind of experiment, but take your time. Don't go too quickly. Kind of evaluate how many you have. Definitely zoom out from time to time and just kind of see where you're at. We may want to work in some of that lighter green, just a few kind of here and there. Over here on the screen left is kind of where I'm adding these in. Okay, let's go ahead and zoom out and just kind of see where we're at. Just kind of making some comparisons. And I'm really liking where this is going. Let's kind of focus here on this top part. I feel like those foundational hair strands that we worked in an earlier lesson, they're feeling a little soft right now. I'm going to switch back to my natural bristle brush. They kind of got softened out as I kind of blended some of my clumps together, as I kind of refined some of those clumps. So just as we did before with our natural bristle brush, and just very lightly, let's come over and just kind of work in some of those strands. We're going to kind of layer over maybe a darker tone. And if it ever at any point it feels too harsh, just take your soft eraser, soft round brush for your eraser, and just kind of haze out some parts. So at this point, it's just really little details that we're working in. A lot of fine tuning, a lot of tweaking. So that's feeling really nice. I'm really happy with the direction we've come with our hair. In the next lesson, we're basically just going to finish out. We're going to work in some more atmosphere into our hair, just to, again, to keep kind of pushing for it to be set into the scene a lot better. We kind of started to do that in an earlier lesson, just working in some of these additional atmospheric colors. And so that's what we're kind of going to do in the next lesson, really focus on that and just add some final tweaks to our female hairstyle. So we'll see you then.